Tad, my man, why'd you gotta make this one so horny? Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about The Dirty Streets of Heaven by Tad Williams, the first book in the Bobby Dollar series. And this was an experience for sure. So I plan to eventually read everything that Tad Williams has written, but I ended up picking this up after talking to him when I did an interview, which I will link below with him. And he kind of convinced me to pick it up because this is very different from the rest of his stuff. It's, he's primarily done fantasy. There's, like Otherland and whatnot has some more sci-fi elements, but this is different. This is a kind of noir fantasy, sort of like urban fantasy kind of feeling. But it's closer to like, Dresden Files than like anything like any of his other fantasy stuff. And just has a very, very different feel. The things it kind of reminds me of is a little bit of like Good Place or Good Omens with some Dresden in there, because the plot here is we have Bobby Dollar, who is an angel advocate basically, and we find out that that's kind of the system. Is there are like guardian angels and stuff, but then when somebody dies, an advocate from the heaven side and an advocate from the hell side. So basically the lawyers go in and they argue before a judge on the fate of the soul and how that's going to go, and that's Bobby Dollar. He's an advocate and arguing for souls, but he also is in basically these angels who do this are in physical bodies, and so he kind of lives in the world. And we hear a lot about what all the angels do. They eat, drink, all kinds of other stuff, and this definitely has a much raunchier feel than I was really expecting. Andrew did warn me a little bit about it, so I kind of knew, but yeah, it's a little bit raunchy, and there's a bit of horniness in it, but then there's later in some pretty explicit sex scenes, which I could have very much done without. But I did overall enjoy this book, despite this really not being my normal kind of thing. I do feel like part of it is it gets sort of grandfathered in because it's Tad Williams, and I love Tad Williams. And the tone and the style are kind of fun, even if it's not totally always my thing. I compared, like I said, to kind of Good Place, Good Omens, which both of those have kind of a non-standard view of, heaven and hell and that type of thing. And this is probably closer to, the Good Omens, where you still have like your normal heaven and hell, whereas the Good Place was a little bit different, but you have bureaucracy, you have different things happening there. And there's some discussions on how it all works and that type of thing. So that bit, it reminded me a lot of there, but then like just kind of the raunchiness and the fact that it's kind of noir-ish, and Bobby Dollar, who's trying to, research something and acting kind of like a private investigator, is what gives it a little bit of that Dresden feel. So I think if you like those things and you're okay with the sort of the more the raunchy type of thing, I think you might really enjoy this. I'm not huge in urban fantasy or noir type of stuff. I'm definitely not big on the horniness level here, and that's also actually why I ended up quitting Dresden, is because that just felt like there was a lot of that. So not my normal thing by any means, but I think pretty solid. Now the other thing I will mention here is this does, despite the fact, so this came out around I think 2012, and it feels almost like it's older, just because I think it's partially because Tad Williams is a bit older. He would have been in like his mid 50s or so when writing this. And it does feel a bit like that. I think you do get some of the things are kind of funny, or just like some of the references that are a little bit dated, which I identify with, because I tend to identify with older references more than more like time appropriate ones for me, for whatever reason. So some of that was kind of fun, but there are a few things that just felt like an old man yelling a little bit. So you do get some of those in here too. I think though it's keeping in mind that this is just sort of Tad being very free, having fun, being a little bit ridiculous, throwing in some ridiculous things that he wouldn't have been able to fit into a different sort of book, because this, taking place in our world allows him just a little bit more freedom to play around versus setting up the intricate, high fantasy type of stuff. So it's very different, and that's the biggest thing I can do. I think if you're going to read this, have your expectations that this does not in any way feel like what I think of when I think of Tad Williams. It's very, very different, but it's still well written, and it's fun, if a bit ridiculous at points. and still well crafted with kind of the mystery and what's happening, the interesting tidbits you find out about how the world, the afterlife, but not really asking the world works, with heaven and hell, all the little tidbits, those kinds of things. So there's definitely some fun here. I am planning to continue this, even though I wasn't like a massive fan. I came out about 3 stars for this, which I feel like is about as good as could be expected, because I knew this wasn't going to be my thing before I went into it, but I still enjoyed it enough. So I will be continuing. I've been warned about some stuff in book 2, so I will see. But I had enough fun with this, like I said, just for the fact that it was Tad, that I'll be continuing, and I'll have to see how the rest of this goes. I don't think this is going to end up being a favorite of mine from Tad, but it's still at least interesting. And like I said, I think people who have less of an issue with sexual content and like a little bit more of the, you know, urban fantasy type of feel, I think, you know, people may enjoy this even more than I did, to be honest, because I enjoyed it, even though specifically there are things in it that I'm not a fan of. So I think that, you know, that should help to figure that out. But yeah, so that's really it for what I had on this one. I'm still trying to get a different copy. My other copy is still not arrived. It was supposedly it was shipped. It hasn't come. So this is this old library copy that I got, and when I got it, I was really sad that it was a library copy. So I've ordered a new one. But I have the other books already too, and I'll probably be trying to continue pretty soon, because I want to finish this series and move on to probably Shadow March or maybe War of the Flowers. But definitely getting some more Tad and go back to the fantasy kind of route. But yeah, like I said, this was fun. This was interesting, and I think it's worth checking out if the things that I described sounded good. Let me know if you read this though, because I'm very curious what people's thoughts are of this, especially if they read a lot of other Tad, because it was just so incredibly different from the normal kind of Tad Williams fare. So I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on it. So definitely let me know in the comments. Otherwise, make sure to give the video a link if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description as always for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.